Senator Roy Blunt joins us this afternoon. I'm hoping you're in Washington and not dealing with this weather.
Well, I am, Mark. I was there Tuesday, Wednesday, and came back really late last night from Kansas City after I was told I had to be here on Friday, and I probably wasn't going to be leaving Kansas City today. So I was
I think you're right. Yeah, you
late night plane, and got to Baltimore and had to drive back to Washington from there. But that was the only way to get back, as they were canceling all my Thursday flights by about 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I don't think you would have gotten out of Kansas City. Do you usually fly into Baltimore, or what's the airport that you usually
I don't, but that was the only way that was the last plane that was leaving that got me here, and so I was on that plane yesterday and got home about midnight instead of getting home late this afternoon after one more day in Missouri before I had to come back for a meeting here on Friday.
I came through Washington a week ago yesterday. I was flying back from London and stopped at Dulles, and what a pit that airport is. It was terrible.
Was it really?
I thought it was. I've been to Reagan National. I wasn't very impressed with Dulles.
Yeah. Well, Reagan National is very close to the building where I work, and fortunately, most of our Missouri flights come in and out of there, and that's the airport I use most of the time.
Better choice. That is a better choice.
Don't get to Dulles very often.
All right, let's talk about the sequester, because this time is ticking away. We thought when the sequester cuts originally were implemented, I think the goal, correct me if I'm wrong, was to put that date on the calendar to say this is going to happen if Congress doesn't do something with the White House. So I think there was the assumption that Congress and the White House would agree to something so the sequester cuts would not be so deep. Now it's looking like these sequester cuts might take place. What's your take on this?
Well, I think the spending cuts are going to happen, and they're not going to be offset by new taxes. They could be offset by other spending cuts. The sequester is not the best way to make spending cuts. Targeted cuts that really look at a program and say, we don't need this and we can eliminate it, or we don't need this and we can postpone it, or this is how we reform it, or this is how we combine two programs and save money. That's what we ought to be doing, and this has been on the books since the summer of 2011, and it was the president's idea. I voted for it, and I voted for it, frankly, thinking that super committee that was created at the same time would find, if not all $1 trillion of spending cuts and savings over the next 10 years, they'd find some of it, and that the sequester would be a $100 billion problem spread over 10 years, or a $200 billion problem spread over 10 years, instead of a $1 trillion problem spent over 10 years. But the law's on the books. We're going to take the cuts. I heard the president say just yesterday, the problem is Congress won't compromise. The problem is that these cuts are going to happen, and the compromise would be to compromise on how you take the cuts or where you take the cuts. For the military, for instance, I'd be willing to give the military, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the ability to find that same amount of money, but find it in whatever targeted cuts they want to take, as opposed to cutting virtually every line item in the defense budget.
I'm sure you're going to hear the rhetoric ramp up between now and then, but the president's out there asking this to the voters. Are you willing to see a bunch of first responders lose their jobs? Do you want teachers laid off, or access to Head Start? All these other things, TSA agents, mental health workers, military. So how does that play out, not only politically, but realistically with people? Because there will be people who will be affected. Now, in the whole scheme of things, we're talking about a very small percentage cut in the federal budget, though.
No, there will be people that will be affected, and eventually we're going to have to go to the side of the budget where the money is, where the 62% of spending is in
entitlements,
the mandatory spending, not the 38% in the discretionary spending, or the half of that, the 20% that's defense spending takes 50% of all these cuts. Eventually, we've got to look in another way. But when the president and his team say we really are willing to take some spending cuts, but we want to have some increased revenues as well, and then you ask them what the spending cuts are, and they don't come up with any ideas as to what they're really willing to do. What they are really willing to do is increase taxes, and that's not going to happen.
So how do you then get serious about, and this seems to be just like the movie Groundhog Day, asking this question to you, but how and when do we actually get serious about deficit spending?
Well, the difference in this and Groundhog Day is we are going to take these cuts. And
well, we're going to take the cuts
last year, and it's not the best. We're doing the right thing, but not in the best possible way. We have to find savings in government spending. What I was going to say was, when they say we're willing to do some spending reductions, but they can't find the reductions in the very first year. It doesn't sound like to me they're really willing to do spending reductions, but they're always willing to increase taxes. We're not all concerned about the impact on the economy of raising taxes $60 billion a year, which they just managed to get done, but very concerned about the impact on the economy of cutting spending $80 billion a year. Now, both of these, any economist will tell you that both of these are not helpful for the economy, but the president wants to do one, and it's more helpful for the economy to show that we're getting government spending under control than it is to raise more taxes. So
do you think there's no way then between now and March 1st that some sort of agreement comes out of the clouds, in your opinion, that the cuts will take place?
The spending cuts will take place. Now, the question is, do they take place under sequestration, or is the compromise is to give the president authority that he should be willing to use as the leader of the country to target the cuts rather than to take the cuts on every line item. But these spending cuts are going to occur, and they should occur, and they should be done in the right way instead of the wrong way, but they're not going to be offset by more tax increases. The president just got $600 billion in tax increases over 10 years. He told people for years that raising that top rate would solve our economic problems. Well, now what it really does is pay the bills for about 6 days. There's no reason to believe the president's being any more forthcoming now about how these tax increases would save the world than when he said it for 4 years that raising the top rate was the solution. Well, he got the top rate raised, and that's what he's going to get, and he's going to have, the leverage here, Mark, has changed. Last year, the leverage was that my side, the side that didn't want to raise taxes, had to come up with some alternative for the president that he would accept, because at that moment, taxes were all going to go back to the 2000 level unless we made an agreement. Now, spending cuts are going to happen, and the agreement is, can you think of a better way to take them than the sequestration? And we'll see if the president's willing to do that or not.
Senator Blunt, I appreciate your time as always, and glad you,
Great to talk to you. Yeah. Love to be there with you in the studio sometime, but maybe not on a day when none of us could get home.
No, that's probably, and I'm sorry, I'm worried about that myself. I think I might be stuck here at KMOX tonight. Thanks, Senator.
I hear you.